on this first section, what we're going to do is I'm going to give you or first part of this, I'm going to give you problems that look like this. How would you, if I gave you a question that looked like this, let's go like that. How would you solve that? Cross multiply, that's your first instinct. Okay? Every single one of the ones today that I'm going to give you, you can cross multiply. So when we cross multiply, doesn't matter which side you go first, but when I cross multiply that way, what do I get? And then on the other way, what would I get? 30. Now what do I do? Divide by 9, and 30 divided by 9 reduces down to what? 10/3. Or if you had 3 1/3 or 3.3 repeating, that would be okay. Okay? Every single one of the ones that you're going to have today are going to look like that. You can cross multiply every single one of them. The only difference is they're not going to be so easy. You're going to have more variables involved than just one. Okay? So, another one that looks like it. If I have 4 over 2x equals 5 over x plus 6. How do I do this? Cross multiply, right? That's what we're going to do?
When you multiply 4 times x plus 6, don't you distribute?
Okay, when I multiply 4 times x plus 6, I need to distribute. Ashton, you are absolutely right. So, which one do you want to do first? What's 2x times 5? 10x. When I multiply here, as Ashton made the comment already, we need to distribute that. What's 4 times x? What's 4 times 6? If you don't get the 24, if you don't remember to FOIL it or distribute out to each piece, you will have it wrong. And that's what some of them were doing first hour, is that they were getting the 4x fine, but then they were putting plus 6. Is that a problem then? If I were to have, instead of this, if I were to put 4x plus 6, is that right? No. So be very careful. Make sure you distribute it to each piece. Now, how do I solve for x? Take away x. So what I'm getting is I'm getting x by itself. So I have 6x equals 24. And then what? And what's 24 divided by 6? 4. Now, here's the part that you also need to be very aware of. You are going to get answers today that do not work. And what I mean by that is, if you plug it back into the original equation, you might get 0 in the bottom. And let me ask you, can you divide something by 0? No. The 11th commandment states, thou shalt not divide by 0. So therefore, you can't do that. You also can't break something into 0 equal pieces. It's not possible. So therefore, if you plug it back in and get 0 on the bottom, then it doesn't work. So if I put 4 into the equation, on the first bottom, 2 times 4, is that 0?
No.
No. What about the second one? Is 4 plus 6 0? No. So I'm okay. If it would have been a negative 6, for instance, as a solution, or 0 as a solution for this one, we would not have been okay. We would have had to throw it away. And what happens if all the answers get thrown away? You have no solution. That is an option. That is going to show up today. Okay? All right, let me give you another one. X minus 3 divided by x plus 5 equals x divided by x plus 2. Okay, what do? Cross multiply. If we do the same way we've been doing this one first, what's x plus 5 times x? X squared plus 5x. Awesome. Now, this one is the problem. And the reason why I'm doing this one is because, and by the way, this one is in your assignment. It's the one that last hour, most of them were getting it wrong because they were not distributing it right. When you have x minus 3 times by x plus 2, you do not get x squared minus 6. That's not right. When you have a binomial, which is two-term thing there, when you have x minus 3 and x plus 2, you need to FOIL. That's what needs to happen here. So what's x times x? What's x times 2x, or 2 I mean? What's negative 3 times x? And what's negative 3 times 2? Okay, now, what was happening to most of them first hour was this part right here did not exist. And that was throwing their answer off. First thing I want you to do is clean that up. What's 2x minus 3x? Negative x. And now, from here, what you need to do, because you have squared in there or whatever, you're going to need to move everything to one side versus the other. You're going to have to factor what you had to do in Chapter 4. That's why I'm doing this section right now instead of later. But does anybody notice if I take an x squared away from both sides, what's going to happen to x squared? Yeah, it goes away. This part right here, if I were to subtract this from this, the x squareds cancel each other out. When you have something that matches on both sides, and they have to match exactly, they can't be like negative 27x on one side and positive 27x. Those are not the same. It has to match exactly. Then they will cancel each other out. So now you're left with 5x equals negative x plus or minus 6. How do you solve for x? Add x. So what is 1x plus 5x? 6x. Then what? What is negative 6 divided by 6? Is that answer okay to have? If you plug it into the original problem, negative 1 plus 5 is 4, and negative 1 plus 2 is positive 1, so we're good. If that would have been a 0 down in the bottom, then we're not so good. Yes, Alex?
There be a 0 on top.
Sure. Because what's 0 divided by anything? 0. You just cannot divide by 0. So you can have 0 on the top, yes, but you cannot have 0 on the bottom. What do you think? That's one of your harder ones. Do you want me to do another one? Alex?
So if we had one where the x squared didn't cancel out, we just have to like square root it?
Then what you could, if it's an x squared and a number, then yes, you can square root it. If it's x squared plus x minus a number, then you got to factor it. You know, the two groups. So if it's something like this, if you had x squared equals 5, then yes, you can square root it and you got your two answers. But if it's x squared minus 3x plus 4 or something like that, then you have to factor it.
And then square root it?
No. Then you'd have to factor it. And then set each group equal to 0. If it factors. Now I just quick made that one up and it doesn't actually factor.
Oh, so like factor it and then...
So you'd have x, and then you'd have whatever you would have. Do you want me to have one that actually factors?
Okay, I get it, yeah, I get it.
Because that one doesn't.
No,
And then you would set each of those groups equal to 0. You have to do that for about 3 of them.
so you could use the Pythagorean, I mean, not that one, quadratic.
The quadratic formula? Yes, if you really wanted to. But the ones today that I'm going to give you will factor. Okay, but you can use the quadratic formula if you'd like. And there's only like 2 or 3 of them that you have to do this to. Maybe even less. Okay, most of them will be like an x and then a number. Ashton. If you have x squared left over.
Okay.
So after you've cross multiplied and after you've combined everything, if you've got x squared left over, then you're going to have to do this. Okay? If you don't, if the x squareds cancel out and you have just an x, then you solve for x. Alex?
Should that be a plus negative 5? When do you make it plus negative?
For what, the top one?
Yeah.
I didn't actually finish them. I just, as an example, showed you what you would do.
So would it be plus negative square root of 5?
Yes, if I was to actually solve it. But you're not going to get square root of anything today. It's going to be whole numbers. All right, any other ones? Would you like me to do another one of these? Where x squared comes out? Okay. Okay, first things first, let's cross multiply. Ashton, since you asked me to do one like this, which way do you want me to go first? So this times this? That's x squared. Then when I go here, what's x squared times negative 1? Negative x squared. And what is negative 2 times negative 1 is plus 2. Good. So all I did is distribute that. There was no foiling involved. I just had to distribute. Now from here, and some people asked on this one, hey, this cancels out. No, it doesn't. Because they're not exactly the same. One's a positive x squared, one's a negative x squared. So what you have to do is you got to get them all to one side versus the other. Which side do you want to move your x squareds to? To the left? Good. Me too. So I'm going to add x squared over. What's x squared plus x squared? 2x squareds. Not 2x to the fourth. Some people were asking me that last hour, and it's inevitable that some people do that all the time. When you add like terms together, you do not add the exponents. The only time you add exponents is when you're multiplying them. And we're not doing that, we're just adding. And 1 plus 1 is 2. Now, how do you solve this? I divide by 2 first, because remember you're getting rid of multiplication or division first. So I got x squared equals 1. And now how do I get rid of the square? You root it. And what's the square root of 1? Plus or minus 1. The square root of 1 is 1.
Oh yeah.
And then if I plugged it back in, on the left-hand side, plus or minus, either way, 1 squared would be 1, minus 2 is negative 1, so we're okay. And on the right-hand side, we'd have 1. We're okay. If it would have been a 0 or the square root of 2, we would not have been okay. We would have had to throw those away. Keep the ones that work, throw away the ones that give you 0 on the bottom. If they all give you 0 on the bottom, then your answer is no solution. Okay? Alex?
So if negative 1 didn't work, but plus 1 did,
Then you'd just be plus 1, right? Any other questions? Okay, so today, here's what I got for you. On page 593, 4 through 12.